This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
Welcome to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Karrh. Join us as Deb talks with her guests, experts in their fields, as they share real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Karrh, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to go back to basics, maybe, is what we should say, because if you don't have what we're going to be talking about today right, your company is probably not going to be successful or not as successful as it could and should be. And that's your messaging. And I'm not talking taglines, slogans, maybe kind of, sort of, but now we're really going to delve into what is your message? How do you get it across to people? And most importantly, why is it important? So please join me in welcoming Jim Karrh to our program today. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Deb. Pleasure to be here.
Well,
We're going to have a conversation about conversations in business.
What a concept. What a concept. So let me tell people a little bit about you. So Jim Karrh, PhD, I should have been saying Dr. Karrh, my apologies.
It's okay.
Jim helps business leaders and organizations to lead more effective customer conversations, which in turn means stronger customer connections and more growth. He has received national and international awards as a consumer researcher, university professor, corporate chief marketing officer, and now as a consultant and speaker. Jim earned his doctorate at the University of Florida and MBA from Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. He is also host of the Manage Your Message podcast. But Jim also knows that you don't have to have a PhD, be a professional speaker, an extrovert, or a brilliant conversationalist in order to bring your business story to life. You can just follow a process he calls managing the message. So again, Jim, welcome.
It is a pleasure to be here, and it's great to be able to have this conversation involving a lot of people who are doing great things.
Right.
Who have a business, they're building something, they're part of a leadership team, and it is a very common thing, which we can talk about obviously in some detail as we go along. But most people, there's a big gap between their passion and their knowledge, and yet their comfort and their confidence in how to talk about it.
Right.
And engage other people. So that's what we're here to do, is help bridge that gap a little bit.
Perfect. Well, let's start with, what do you mean by message? Is it Nike's slogan of just do it, or, our mission statement? What is somebody's message?
Well, it is a giant bucket with it. We put a lot of things into, and the things that people will tend to think of the most, Deb, when they think message is, it's our pitch, it's our slogan, it's our tagline, it's our logo. You're right about all that. I think of it more as an area of focus of the everyday conversations that happen in and around your business. And certainly all of those elements, the things that we just talked about, all the way from the big lofty vision, mission types of statements into a digital social media presence, into paid promotion and PR, all of those things need to be in rough alignment. But let's face it, the language of your advertising or your PR or even your social media or your vision or mission statement is not the language that real people use.
Right.
So so think more about the conversations in the hallway, at a meeting, with onboarding some new people, or with a new client, or you're out at a ball game or at a house of worship or a community event, or telling your friends about the cool thing that you're doing. What we want is for the elements of your value, the things that make you distinct and interesting, to be able to be carried forward into those everyday conversations. Some of the ones that you'll have yourself, a lot of them, you won't be around for those. You want to be able to feed a system, and when other people, the people I would call messengers, might be the people that you work with, it might be the people that are your current customers, your prospects, your friends in the community, are all talking about you in a consistently positive and strategic way.
Right.
So it is, you mentioned mission and vision statement, and I'll say, Deb, just as an early volley in all of this, and to have people think in an appropriate way. that a lot of your listeners may think, well, we have a pitch, or we have a vision, we have a mission, we have a passion, we have those sorts of things. I go,
And it's
great.
on the wall.
It's on the wall. And that's great. And it's a great starting point. But I did a lot of research for my new book. It's called The Science of Customer Connection. So looking at research would seem to be, thank you very much.
I do a good Vanna.
Always happen to have a copy around. But a lot of research, a little bit of my own, and a lot of it's my own experience and things that I've seen, but I also pulled from a lot of content analyses, cognitive psychology, brain psychology, and bringing a lot of those elements together. One of the things that will probably surprise exactly 0 of your viewers or listeners is that most vision and mission statements use the same words.
Right.
They sound very much alike. So we talk about service to our community, we talk about inclusion, sustainability, excellence, customer, all those sorts of things. And
they're very pithy.
They're very pithy and lofty, and they're well-intentioned, Deb.
Right.
There's nothing that's untrue.
No.
But they all sound the same. We want to be distinct. So when people think about Deb, they think about a certain thing. They think about a certain solution or value that you have to offer that's different than what anybody else would have. So we don't want to get stuck in the same language. And frankly, most vision mission statements, they are committee deals that they are the process of a 14-month slog through, meetings and validation and all that. Not surprising, it's a little bland and overcooked. So what we want to do is think about a few key elements, the things that you really want people to know about you, believe about you, and act upon. And how do we distill those in a way that's clear, it's conversational, it's shareable, and then have a system so we actually over time create a flywheel that helps power the business. And we can talk about the different steps and stages about how to do that.
Right. And clearly a mission statement or a vision statement is not what somebody thinks of when asked about someone else's business, or even your employer or your company. You're not going to spout off that 1 or 2 sentences, right? Because they shouldn't be too long, as what you do, or who you serve, or all of those things. And so it's nice. It's nice to have there. Takes up space on the wall. You didn't have to worry about something else. But it really doesn't mean very much because it comes back to that word conversational. It has been written in a way that it's not conversational. And one of the other things that immediately comes to mind to me when I'm thinking about something like that is not conversational is your 30-second elevator pitch.
Yes.
And right, we work and we memorize them and all this, and they, again, words, just words.
I have a point of view on the whole elevator pitch concept. And again, I look at this, and I'm not saying throw it away.
Right.
If you've done, there are elements there to build upon. But I will say the elevator pitch is based on a premise and a scenario that probably describes about 0.01% of the conversations that you have. So an elevator pitch is essentially a brief monologue. And I've even been in elevator pitch competitions. I was a judge for one. But it is really kind of a contrived scenario, isn't it? So you kind of take a deep breath and boom, how much can I put
and you
into
timed yourself, right? Because you got 30 seconds.
So it becomes a brief oxygen depriving monologue about what you have. And so I think it violates a few premises of what really make for a good conversation. Although we can build upon it as we'll talk about. The good news about having an elevator pitch is it forces you into being concise.
Right.
You are, what you do, what the benefits are, whom you serve, what you would want people to do. The pitch might be for a new customer, it might be for an investor, it might be for a partner or a channel partner, whatever that might be. And that's the other thing about an elevator pitch. There tends to be kind of a one-size-fits-all. So I'm going to put everything that I believe is cogent.
It's not going to matter who I'm giving it to.
That's right. But frankly, your interesting conversation is going to be different if you want somebody from the local media to be interested in what you're doing versus a prospective customer versus a current happy, wonderful client that you want to talk about to her friends about it, to anyone else like that. So what's relevant is going to be different for different audiences.
Mm-hmm.
So what we really want to do is, again, concise is good,
Mm-hmm.
but not make it a monologue, always
Right.
to make it a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is true about all sorts of conversations. When you think about all the way from job interviews
Mm-hmm.
to business conversations and pitches, if we're talking either one-to-one or one-to-few, is that you want a rough balance of who's doing the talking and who's
Mm-hmm.
doing the listening, of
Right.
asking questions, of answering questions. The best job interviews are not soliloquies,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're
Right.
viewed on as being more of a balanced dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll say one of the things that makes social media kind of tough for actually being persuasive is, in social media, on average, we talk about ourselves 80% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's very self-referent.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there are lots of good things on the elevator pitch
Mm-hmm.
to think about. I think it's a better approach, a more useful approach, is to think of that short conversation in little chunks, a
Mm-hmm.
few talking points. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so what is it, for example, one we may call kind of the identity statement, or the
Mm-hmm.
overall view is like, whom you serve, why are you in business?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is it that is really your calling?
Right.
A little chunk of whom do you serve? You know, for your work, Deb, not everybody is a great prospective client.
Mm-hmm.
It may
Right.
differ,
Mm-hmm.
and it may differ for your listeners and viewers
Mm-hmm.
according to how big they are, what
Mm-hmm.
industry they in, where they reside, how they use services or
Mm-hmm.
products like yours. Some are going to be good fits, some are going to be not so good fits.
Mm-hmm.
So having a good sense of whom do we serve
Mm-hmm.
the best, who's the best fit for
Right.
what we do,
Mm-hmm.
what benefit do those people get out of it? You know, how do we provide that service, or
Mm-hmm.
what kind of how do we make that product and get it to them the way that they can use? What are the benefits that they get, and what it's like to work with us?
Mm-hmm.
What do our raving fans say about us,
Mm-hmm.
using their words?
Right.
So I would say, if you would have at the ready for you and your colleagues and other people, that little sense of, here's what we're about,
Mm-hmm.
here's whom we best serve, here's how we do that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the benefit that they get from it. And then what is it like to work with us, which is
Right.
usually going to be as much of a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it might be, well, they get a high return on investment for their
Mm-hmm.
money in our world-class disruptive platform.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes it may be an economic value,
Mm-hmm.
but oftentimes it's, you know, Deb, we worked with her when we had something really go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a calming voice, and she gave us good advice, and the worry level in our room went down dramatically, and everything worked out okay. So it might be more of a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Took something off our plate,
Right.
lowered our anxiety, lowered our exposure. We don't have to worry about
Mm-hmm.
it. So those sorts of things, then you're ready for almost any kind of
Right.
conversation.
Right. And that's the important thing, is you're wanting somebody to come up, to come up and ask for more. Tell me more, tell me how this worked, all those various things. And that is hard when, say you're at a networking thing and you've gone around the room, and everybody stood up and they did their, and somebody, and somebody timed it. I love those when, they're timing you. But you really want somebody to come up and say, tell me more. And then you do have that conversation. And it's interesting. I was in a mastermind group here in Atlanta for a while, and great people. And it was a very small group. I mean, when we had everybody there, we might have had 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did our 30-second every time, all those various things. And then we decided to mix it up one time. Now, we met every other week. So we heard everybody's elevator pitch every other week. And so we mixed it up, and you had to give the person next to you, you had to give their, none of us could do it. It was sad. I mean, it really was very enlightening, but sad at the same time when you looked at that person and went, he sells insurance? And,
Right.
And that really showed us, okay, we're not doing this correctly, because we weren't able to say, he helped this person do this, because of his, because they worked with him, as an, had their insurance through them. When tragedy struck, they were still able to pay off their bills, things like that. I mean, and
Yes.
it's that word you used before, it's that emotion. None of us could give somebody else's pitch because none of us had picked up on that emotion.
Deb, I'll share a story. I was asked by our local Chamber of Commerce. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they said, we're putting together a speed networking event. And you're a messaging guy. We'd like for you to be part of this and just kind of help people to do it. And I frankly don't like those sorts of things, but I
Right.
did it. I
Yeah.
did it.
The whole speed dating thing, no.
Oh, it was, and so imagine, if you will, it was about, you mentioned you had maybe 20 in your group if everybody was there. It was about that, maybe 24 people that were in here. And the format was, as you might guess, everybody kind of goes around, it circles around the table and chairs, and you sit across from someone or stand across from them, and everybody spends a minute going all the way around. So, and then you take a break and then and keep doing it. Well, we're getting toward the end here. So as the circle goes around, and this woman, I think she was in like a service hospitality business, but we're like number 22, 23, and everyone is just about had it.
Hi, my name is Deb.
Oh, she actually, as we were getting ready to call out the time once more, she looked at me, she said, "Can we just not do this for a minute? I'm tired." I said, "It's okay. Yes, it'll be fine." So networking events are one of the ones where, yes, we would think about being able to have this at the ready.
Right.
But it's one little part of the toolkit. And so one of the things that I think might be useful to chat about a little bit is, if you are, and it's for yourself, your team, your organization, and I would say, Deb, the skills and the approach that I talk about and that I've researched, certainly good for your business. But if you have a community event, you have a cause, you have something else, that these skills and this confidence and fluency that will come out of it will help with really anything you care about.
Right.
Really help build an audience.
Right. Yeah. You want them to support you, to support whatever it is, to talk about it themselves, all of those things. So you have to give them those tools. And it can't be just the one or two sentence thing. And so many times it's that story, it's that emotional appeal, but of course the important thing is that you want to control it, and I'm not saying script it for them, but you want people to say what you would prefer them to say, and so how do you go about doing that?
Well, why I call what I do managing the message. It's not tight control, nor is it laissez-faire, because then you're all over the place. I'll tell you, the approach here, Deb, is for people to realize that this is a manageable business issue and a great opportunity that's there. And I'll go back to your question, and then I want to suggest an approach here. But to your question, and years ago, you mentioned in the intro, I was a university professor. So I was a pointy head professor, and I was doing some teaching and consulting and that sort of thing. But oftentimes asked by my students, if they weren't asking if this would be on the test or did I have to show up for class, a few of them would ask me, "Would you serve as a reference? Would you write a letter of recommendation for me to get a job, an internship, go to graduate school, whatever the case might be?" And so some of us have been asked for that sort of thing. And what do we typically respond with? Well, who is it for? Well, what would you, what are the kinds of things that you would like me to get across? Oftentimes I would, and it could be seen as lazy, I thought it was rather strategic on my part, but say, why don't you draft something? And bring it to me, because I really want to understand. I don't want to have something that's bland or off target if I really do want to help you. Now, in the days of today, think of LinkedIn recommendations. And the way that works. You probably have a bunch. I have a bunch. We get asked for them.
You'll be asked for one after this program.
We'll do one after this program. We want testimonials from our customers and clients. Most of the time, people will say yes, by the way. They do want to help.
They want to be helpful.
They want to be helpful. They have an emotional tag into your success. But what is our initial thing we like? What would you like me to say?
Yes.
So people do want to help, but they don't want you to put a blank canvas in front of them. So managing the message is actually being helpful, not just to you, it's also being helpful to them.
Otherwise, it's so generic that it's no good. When I work with people about LinkedIn, I tell them you have to get LinkedIn recommendations. And you have to be specific, not just, "Hey, Jim, will you give me a LinkedIn recommendation?" Especially if it's somebody that you didn't talk to 10 minutes ago, because you might be going back to former employers, former coworkers. And sadly, we all like to think we're memorable, but unless it's a bad reason, we're not memorable. So I tell them, remind them, we work together at X company on X project, all of those various things. Otherwise you get, Jim was a great person to work with. I'd hire him again. I mean, at whoopee.
Always
And
very helpful,
right.
pleasant. Yes.
Yeah. You get such a generic response that it makes no sense at all. And so when you tell them a little bit more about kind of what you want them to address, as you said, they're more than happy to do that because they don't want to write the Jim was a great employee type of thing.
That's right.
And so it's not a negative that you're doing that.
And this is all part of the idea about managing this for the benefit of your career, your business, and the causes and things that you care about.
Right.
I'd like to make, there's one point, and the degree of the opportunity, the actual numbers behind this, frankly, I found surprising too, doing research for this. And here's why, as even just what we've talked about so far, I think everybody would agree, yeah, it makes sense. Yes, I want to be specific. Yes, I want to have all this.
Right. But what?
Gosh, you're not telling me anything that terribly, do I really need to do this? Well, I'd say, yes, here's why. And if you think about in our digital world today, the role of word of mouth, say online versus offline. And if you'd ask me, as I was getting ready to put together the research for the book, you said, Jim, these days, where would you think would be the relative incidence of word of mouth between the digital online world's rating and review sites, social media, versus the old-fashioned analog offline world of one-to-one or one-to-few conversations, generally face-to-face, but maybe over the phone? Where would that be? And I would have thought, Deb, I would say probably it used to be very heavy analog, offline. And then these days there's so much volume of online stuff. Right. It's probably about 50-50. I would say fair guess. Well, a guy named Jonah Berger did some research. He's at the Wharton School and wrote a book called Contagious and looked at a huge data set of actually following people around and tracking things of where it occurred, and then looked at from other industries as well. And it's been very consistent and surprising to many. Now, what Berger found is that 93% of word of mouth is offline.
Wow.
7% online. That's a difference of 13 times. Some others have found that 85 to 90% offline. Now, you kind of think, oh, no, that cannot be true.
But I don't spend know so much time on Facebook.
Right. And we know the volume of conversations that are there. We know that sort of thing. But it's the very fact that the offline conversations aren't being tracked. They're not being scanned, shared, recorded in the same way. But they happen. They happen at much greater volume than online. And if you hear something offline from a friend, a trusted colleague, someone you like, you put greater weight to it. Believe it more, you're more likely to act upon it. So there's much more quantity, and there's also higher quality of word of mouth offline. So we go through a lot of things about our online presence, our online reputation, our ratings and reviews. Would never say that's not important. I care about them for me and my business. We want those to be consistent. But if you think of a buffet of opportunities, right, 2 buffet lines, and one has 13 times more food than the other side, and it's actually better food,
right?
I
want to go to that line.
I want that line. And so the opportunities are so immense if we, in fact, get a chance to not be perfect, because you won't be perfect, but simply manage it. Bring some habits and bring some good planning and intentionality to it. And that's the basis of what I talk about, and what I write about, and what I think might be really useful for your listeners and viewers. So if I may just kind of share what the approach is.
Yes, because it's like, okay, so we've got this big bulk of people. Again, how do we get them to say what we want them to say? So what do we do with it? This is a big category. This seemed really squishy and like. So what I have found through research and experience is think about this whole issue as a 3-legged stool. So you've got 3 parts that you want to have in rough alignment. We'll talk about those, where the problems might tend to be, and then we can talk about some specific examples and like. So think of this 3-legged stool as your message,
So this is actually the things that you want to say. It's the words, it's the stories, it's the examples, it may be data or visuals, but it's a thing that you want people to know about. Words matter. The second leg of the stool, I would say messengers. Think of the people who you want to carry the message. The person you want to give the testimonial, to give a referral, that you want to help you recruiting people into the business. So we have to think about their needs, what they want, what they're confident in doing, and feed that system. The third leg of the stool are what I call management or management habits. So think of, how do you keep the stories fresh? If you have a new client or a new employee or new colleague and they come in, how do you get them up to speed?
Right.
How do you make sure that your messaging doesn't wind up being like the pantry that we took a look at our pantry in our house a few weeks ago and go, this is nuts. We can't find anything. We have to clear it out, right? And so make sure that everything's very accessible and fresh and relevant. So message, messengers, and our management habits. We want this to be woven into the ways that we talk about ourselves, the way that we meet, the tools and training and onboarding, and consistent with all the other ways that we speak to the marketplace.
Right.
So think about all of those things, and then where it can tend to go wrong, then you have an approach.
Right. Well, and of course, what you want is you want that stool to be even. You know, and so you don't want to have something, you know, say maybe messengers. You don't want that out of control. You know, and so, yeah, you do have to kind of manage it so that it stays nice and even.
Deb, you're right. And if you think of it like any three-legged stool that exists in the real world, not the conceptual world, if one of the legs is weak or it's shorter than the others, then you're going to fall predictably into the area of weakness. So if you're looking at your business, your career, your cause, and thinking, well, where might we have an issue?
Right.
What would we attack first? Because it's a big menu here that we have to talk about. So I have found that the symptoms of problems, if I've got the 3 M's of message, messengers, and management that are kind of the concept, I could call these the 3 C's. They are crickets, commodities, and cowboys.
Okay.
So crickets, in my hometown, a little town in South Georgia, you get into a rural area, you talk about the crickets are chirping in the early evenings because you can't hear anything else. There's nothing else making noise.
It's overwhelming.
Right. And you hear, we talk about the crickets are chirping sometimes with nothing's happening. And in business, the crickets are chirping. That's a bad sound. It means it's hard to grow.
Right.
Whether you're trying to get new business, whether you're trying to get more business from your current customer base, growth is hard to come by. Mostly, I find that when the crickets are chirping in your business, you don't know why, it could be a problem with messengers. In other words, you don't have enough of them. You don't have enough other people kind of helping feed the system and recommending you and talking about you. Oftentimes, if it's an entrepreneur, someone is a small business owner, it kind of comes on them and them alone.
Right.
And it's hard to grow with one voice. And that gets exhausting after a while. So you don't want to burn yourself out, and you don't want to limit your growth opportunities. So if the crickets are chirping, maybe think, well, let's make our first step trying to recruit and feed more messengers.
Right.
The second is commodities. So commodities, when you sound like everybody else, right? You might know deep in your heart that what we offer is different and better than somebody else, but consumers or investors or clients, it's all kind of, they all see us the same way. You mentioned someone who's in the insurance business. I've had an insurance client. It's really hard for people in financial services or software or areas like that to be seen as different. And it's just the way our brains are wired, Deb, is that we tend to kind of fall into familiar patterns. We talk about ourselves. We talk about what we're comfortable with. We tend to fall into industry lingo.
Oh, yeah.
Acronyms after a while. And so all the insurance people sound alike. So you got to be able to come up with some words and stories that can help make you distinct. And using stories is one of the best ways to break through. We'll talk about that as well.
Right.
The final symptom that may help you decide what to attack first is, I call it cowboys. It could be cowgirls, but the cowboy mentality is one of autonomy. Someone who's independent minded, they're going to do it themselves. I find this a lot when I work with groups of professional sales teams.
Mm.
And the people, they're good. They believe in it. They want to go out and do it, but they want to do it their way.
Ah.
And I hear that very often from CEOs, heads of organizations, and they've got people in different units, maybe different geographies, doing different things. And they'll say something like, Jim, it's killing me. I mean, if you went out of here, you went down the hallway, and the first 10 people that you saw, you asked them our value proposition. And it'd be something like, well, 4 of them would be like deer in the headlights. They wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah.
The other 6 would probably give you 4 or 5 different stories. So it's inconsistency. That's a problem. And that's a problem ultimately for both trustworthiness and scale.
Right.
People won't trust you if they're hearing different things from different sources. They don't know what to believe.
Right.
And you can't scale inconsistency. So trying to harness in, bring in the Cowboys a little bit, and that becomes more of a question of messaging habits.
Right.
Are you helping train people, refresh people, making sure people are certified and comfortable in knowing how to tell that story? And like you said earlier, Deb, we're not going to overly script it. If someone handed you a script and said, here's exactly the way I want you to talk about the business, they say, nope. I do not need something boring. But if you told them a great story, or if you gave them a great example, they would say, oh, that's actually good. That's the thing I look forward to talking about on the outside.
Right.
So those are the things to do. Kind of look for where the areas of weakness might be. You probably either have data or a feeling in your gut or both about what you could fix best. And then if, as we said, if you can bring those into rough alignment, don't worry about trying to be perfect. Because most companies are really bad at talking about themselves, and things are a bit out of control. So if you're just consistently good, you have a big competitive advantage.
Right. And it's not just the spoken word that you have to manage. It's the look too, and what are people going to see? If say they get one thing on Facebook and you direct them to your website, which is what you should do, and the website is totally different, sometimes they don't even catch that but there is a mismatch. And so you're thinking, well, I'm sorry, if they can't get their message right on Facebook and here, maybe they can't do the job for me. And so, are your marketing materials the same? I always love, when organizations are using the brochure or the business card that they designed 20 years ago, because they bought 10,000 of them, and it's like, okay, it's not just, I mean, how many times do you go to a business thing and you get a business card and somebody's crossed something out? Because, and it's like, no, no, start over, do it again, make sure that everything matches. And it's, everything from the message to the colors, to the logo, all of those various things, and that is more of a pure marketing type of thing. But yeah, it's about getting that message consistent everywhere.
And the brand is part of the message. It's going to be the overall feeling that people have. And again, as you say, you really want all those parts to be consistent. What I find a lot, though, is that people pay a lot of attention to the branding. They pay a lot of attention to a few other areas like that, but they don't know how to kind of carry that forward. So oftentimes, if it's in a larger or more complex organization, and people might see the logo or the look of the website inside your own company, and they don't know why those choices were made. They don't know what the inspiration was for the logo. Why did we pick some colors rather than others? Why do we talk about some things rather than others? When I'm helping clients put together, sometimes we'll actually put together a playbook of helping to guide those conversations. And when we talk about the messengers, it's, I think, really important to involve the people, or at least some of the people whom you expect to carry that message in helping create the message. Co-creation is a very valuable tool, because not only do people feel valued, you get the benefit of their language, and you also build a lot more street cred inside your organization, because people buy into it. And at the very least, I would say, as you just were talking about there, Deb, if you have a logo, a website, things like that, maybe the other people inside your company weren't involved in those decisions, but now and again, it might be good to ask them what they think.
What do you think that logo means?
Does this represent the way that you talk?
Mhm.
Does it represent the kinds of questions or observations that you get
Mhm.
out from your friends or customers, our
Mhm.
suppliers, our alumni, whomever,
Mhm.
and just a little bit of a reality check?
Mhm.
Because what you don't want is you might have somebody, and this happens all the time, Deb, somebody's been working for the company for 8 years and they may hand someone a business card and that's an interesting logo. Where'd that come from? They go, I have no idea.
It's printed on my card.
It
Mhm.
came from the printer.
Mhm.
Next.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
involving people, let them know the rationale, but as
Mhm.
much as you can,
Right.
if you want them to share the message or be able to refer
Mhm.
to it, involve them.
Mhm. Right.
They'll be better messengers for you.
Well, and it's important to remember that anybody can be that messenger. We shouldn't rely on our salespeople or whoever it is. Many years ago, I worked for a company, and a big financial company, and the CEO was a very firm believer in the fact that everybody was a messenger, and he would say specifically, "What are they saying in the mailroom?" And he really cared about that because he said, they're not going to know the product information. But if somebody says, hey, I see you work for X company and you work in the mailroom, or you're the CEO or the CFO or whatever, what is going to be said? And he firmly believed that every single person had to be on the same page.
Could not agree more, Deb. And I will give you two examples, one to the positive and one to the negative,
Mhm.
cringeworthy, awful. Let's start with the positive first.
Okay.
I had a client who was in the HVAC business, so
Hmm.
heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So there's
Hmm.
people who are out there selling air conditioning
Hmm.
units and heaters and servicing those and maintaining them and all sorts of air quality issues.
Hmm.
Most of their customer contact, as we found, about 70% were with field technicians. They're the people we call
Right.
techs,
Hmm.
right? So they're the ones going into homes and
Hmm.
offices and doing that. People, you know them by
Hmm.
name.
Hmm.
You like
Right.
your guy.
Bob
Um,
always came.
and
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
wonderful people and they're by nature problem
Hmm.
solvers. But here was the crickets chirping to a small degree for this HVAC company in that they had more than just selling these big equipment pieces. They had a lot of other
Oh,
services
okay.
for air quality and
Hmm.
things but they weren't really moving as
Hmm.
as quickly as they thought they could. They weren't
Hmm.
selling as much from their entire
Hmm.
portfolio. And what they came to realize is that these techs who had most of the customer
Hmm.
conversations didn't even know the existence of
Right. Yeah.
these
So
other.
they couldn't say, hey, have you ever thought about?
Right.
Hmm.
So what we didn't want, we're not going to try to turn those people into something that are
Right.
not.
Hmm. They're
As you
not
said,
the
we're not going to try to make
salespeople. Hmm.
everybody a salesperson,
Hmm.
but they are problem solvers who
Hmm.
care about their customers
Yes.
and they
Hmm.
do want to help. So for them to simply know that if they see, mildew someplace or they
Hmm.
see something that might be an air quality
Hmm.
issue, hey, you might not know this, but
Hmm.
we can help with
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
We know your home, we know your business
Right.
better than anybody. May I show you something? And
Hmm.
then they could pass that on
Right.
along. So once we cracked that code a little
Hmm.
bit, then they were able to grow much faster.
Hmm.
The negative cringeworthy thing, and this is where you can get a reality check from your important audiences and stakeholders and the
Hmm.
people who know you well. This is one I wrote about. I included in the book as well. It's from Drake University in Iowa, a really good
Hmm.
school. And they decided that they wanted to have a new recruitment campaign for high school seniors and getting them to come in
Hmm.
to Drake. Well, one of the things that they were trying their darndest to be a little bit innovative, a little bit provocative, a little bit different for these media savvy, digital savvy teenagers who are looking at where to go to
Hmm.
school. And so they had an agency and then they had done an online survey of high school seniors and they were looking at different messages. Okay. Drake University,
Hmm.
the idea that they wanted was to talk about the Drake advantage. So it was Drake,
Hmm.
you think about good academics and all that,
Hmm.
plus all these other things of being in a nice small city, of
Hmm.
the sense of community and activities that they had. Drake plus, the Drake advantage, if you can see where this is going. So they
Hmm.
crafted
Oh.
talking only to high school
Hmm.
seniors with a big headline that said D plus.
Yeah. I want to go somewhere where I can get a D plus.
D plus. This really happened, Deb. And so, and predictably,
Hmm.
faculty, alumni, donors, people in the community were like, what are you doing?
Right.
Did it not occur to anyone that at an academic institution, particularly a really
You don't
solid
do
one,
that. Yes.
right? So, who's next? Fordham? We're going to put the big F up there?
Yes, I know.
So, just spending a little bit of time, they backtracked and then they had to change
Right.
it like, and basically apologize to other important stakeholders. Are like, we had a blind spot there. We
Right.
should have at least run it by you, and somebody would have noticed before we put this thing out to
I know.
market. Not lasting damage, but
No.
just goes to show whether you're trying to equip more people to go out and sell and service more types of things, or if you just need a reality check, people who know you well and might see something differently, speak a little bit different language, it helps to involve people
Oh,
who
yeah.
want to share your message.
Well, and we've all seen it on, various places. The logo's gone bad, or the tagline's gone bad. All of those various things. Of course, I get a kick out of those because, that's what I do. But yeah, you're always thinking, who did not see that?
Right.
And and a lot of times it's, well, we paid $30,000 to this firm and they came up with this. It's like, I'm sorry, who didn't see it? And so that is where it's good. Get somebody totally unrelated. Ask them, ask them what their opinion is. All of those various things. And at some point, yes, you do have to make that decision. But you don't want to have things out there that are just going to make you the butt of jokes, as opposed to, hey, we want to work with this person.
That's right. So people who are important for you to weigh in, people who will have a different perspective, have your best interests in mind, and will tell you the truth. They will tell you if you have kale stuck between your teeth or if your teeth don't make you look good.
Right.
And do that, again, from an area of trying to help. It doesn't have to be a long committee decision. We're not going to get back to creating the mission statement over, as we talked about earlier. But and one of the shortcuts, Deb, and this is, not only does it give you good content, but it strengthens relationships. If you're thinking about a rebranding, a new logo, or thinking about going into a new area, or just talking about yourself in a fresh way, ask some of your raving fan customers what they think. And say, why do you like, we know we're not perfect, no one's perfect, but why do you like doing business with us? How does that, and then just be quiet.
Right.
Let them talk, listen to their language, and you'll probably find out a lot. And here's the extra payoff. Those clients, those partners, those friends will appreciate the fact that you listened to them.
Right.
And you listen to their voice.
Yeah. And you don't want to be paralysis by analysis, because we can get stuck in that. This is, and so it comes back to what we were saying at the very start, the conversation. We don't have scripted conversations. So things might go a little funny on occasion, but it's okay, because we can get through that.
We can. And if I would have anything here, and I know we have a few minutes left and we can talk about some particular tips, you may have some specific questions. If there's a common thread through all this that I really hope that everyone will take to heart. First of all, an incredibly large opportunity, 13 times more in the offline versus the online for generating word of mouth. You can do that. You can manage it. It's a manageable business problem. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yes, don't let perfection get in the way of trying some things out. And what I would do is think of a specific kind of conversation that is important to you. Is it the conversation of the techs out in the marketplace who are meeting with customers on a regular basis? Is it a conversation with lapsed clients? Maybe you look at it and say, we have clients or customers, they're buying 20% of what we have to offer. And they've been customers of ours forever. We need to find out why. They may just not know. So just think about the next time we have an account review, or we're having a sit down, having lunch with someone, what is it new that we can talk about or help prompt that? So just think of a conversation that you or one of your associates would give, and what is it that people need to know? They need to be comfortable in how to do it, questions they need to ask, and just kind of reverse engineer that process a little bit. Play with that one. See how it goes. You'll probably get more results, more immediate results than you would even imagine. And the great thing, Deb, with with using everyday conversations to your advantage, notice that at no point do we talk about you having to turn your business model on its head.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to change your product or pricing or how it's distributed or even the people in and around your business. You just need to prompt more of the right kinds of conversations.
Right. And you mentioned something that I thought was very important, and that's, sometimes people don't even know what all you have. We, mentioned that several times. I had a client, big client. I mean, they were a very substantial client. I did public relations for them for a long time, and I got the dreaded "we were going with someone else" call, and I was like, why? Yeah,
Yes.
but I'm perfect. No, I said, we've worked together for years, and and I said, so I am curious as to why. Because it was not that they changed people from their end or anything like that. And they said, well, we went with this company because they can do more. They can do this and this and this. And I was really quiet for a second. And the person I was talking to said, what? I said, I do all of those things. And she went, oh, we didn't know that. And so because I hadn't been having those conversations, and I think that's one of the big problems that we end up with as a business owner is we assume client X only buys A and B, and we forget to tell them about C and D. And then we're just totally perplexed when they go somewhere else. So it's not, we're beating them over the head with it. Again, it's just, okay, hey, remember, we can also do this and this and this.
Or at the very least, even if it's outside of your purview there, you want to be seen as someone that can help them solve problems.
Right.
Take advantage of opportunities. So you would probably know. So it might be someone that's outside of your portfolio of services, maybe kind of related. And Deb, forgive me, I may get on something that you do, but maybe they needed, media training for somebody in Slovakia or whatever what the case might be. And say, I can't provide that directly.
But I can find someone.
But I can find someone who's going to meet your standards and be easy to work with and the like, and they will love you even more forever because you can help with that. But it is very common that just what you did. And I've run into the same thing. It's very easy when people say, "Oh, well, I guess you're like a marketing guy, you're a messaging guy, and what does it mean? Are you an agency?" And no. And do you do training? Yeah, I do training. And so it's up to us to often tell stories. And as we're meeting with especially our long-standing customers and clients, and just share a story about, it was just interesting. I don't know if this has ever crossed your mind, but I had a client in a similar kind of situation. They found themselves needing this thing. Right. And we were so happy to be able to partner with them because we were able, and oh, wow, Deb, I didn't know.
Didn't know you could do that.
So you don't have to hand people a long brochure, but you can tell some stories or share some things when they say, what's new? Well, let me tell you what's new. It's actually very exciting in our business.
Yeah. Well, now, Jim, one of the things, we're talking about the stool, and the stool as in the three-legged stool of message managing and messengers. And when I was reading your book, look, I'm going to Vanna again. Here's the book.
Oh, thank you so much.
What I was thinking about was, okay, well, for small business owners and entrepreneurs who are the company completely by themselves, maybe they have one or two other people, but it really is just them. How do they get other people to be sharing that message? And because I think that is probably one of the biggest frustrations that we have is that we're in it alone. So how can we get other people to be helping us with this?
Well, and there are ways in each of those three legs of the stool, if you, so to speak. So one of them is in the message. Well, if you want your message to be shared, even if you don't have a lot of people in, if you're wanted to be shared in the community, want to be shared in your industry and with among especially early adopters or your own customer base to help grow, well, we need a shareable message. Right. And so clearly a story or two that you think really shows what it is that you can, what you can do is a good way to do that. And messengers, so you might not have 200 employees or a giant sales force, but you do have you have suppliers, you have vendors, you have friends, you have some customers, and friends of friends, and you have a lot of people who know you, like you, trust you, and have some stake in wanting to see you do well. Right. So that might mean that you, in terms of and I break it down again in kind of terms of three, but your messengers, in order to do a really great job as messengers,
Mm-hmm.
need knowledge, skill, and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So knowledge is knowing what you do,
Right.
right? Maybe it is
Mm-hmm.
that story, maybe just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of
Mm-hmm.
that. Skill, just enough fluency in terms of how to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it is a story to share. And then confidence in knowing that they're not the only ones doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sharing this story with 10 of my favorite customers,
Mm-hmm.
and hoping that if you see somebody that would benefit the way that you have benefited,
Mm-hmm.
that you'll pass that along.
Right.
And so they'll know that they are part of something that's
Mm-hmm.
growing, and there's social
Mm-hmm.
proof around it.
Right.
And then the same, the management part, maybe you're managing yourself
Mm-hmm.
as much as you're managing
Right. Mm-hmm.
a giant team.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I'm a solopreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of the same way. So it becomes a way of whether you do that through a customer relationship
Mm-hmm.
management software, whether you do that through, I would suspect, Deb, you will work with people with an editorial calendar
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes. You can do that, one of those for
Right.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
saying this week,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to reach out and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share a story with so-and-so, or I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that I'm going through enough of the habits and reinforcing things. It's so easy to get stuck in the doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we can, especially as entrepreneurs, as small business people, we can get into feast or famine.
Mm-hmm.
We go out and we
Right.
want to tell that message
Mm-hmm.
and share that story, and all of a sudden we have new opportunities and things
Mm-hmm.
coming in, and then all of a sudden we get very busy in the
Mm-hmm.
doing.
Right. We
And
forget
we
that we
forget
need
this.
to always be marketing ourselves.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So it can be simple reminders, or calendars,
Mm-hmm.
or things like that. Some elements you can automate. I would say don't automate too much,
Right.
because you do want this to be personal. You want it to be
Mm-hmm.
your voice, your story.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want it to sound like an SEO expert from
Mm-hmm.
the other side of the
Right.
globe, who's putting something together.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of your own habits can be
Mm-hmm.
a LinkedIn post. It can be blogging. It can be whatever it is that you're doing. Having lunch outside of your business, and listening to a customer. Whatever that might be. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the process and the rationale and the benefits are really just as good if you're by yourself or with a small
Mm-hmm.
team.
Right.
And to carry that symbolism even a little bit
Mm-hmm.
further, Deb, frankly, smaller enterprises have an advantage over bigger ones
Right.
when it comes to this.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a chief marketing officer, I was with kind of a mid-sized private company, but we were in the bottled spring water business,
Mm-hmm.
our main business. We had two other businesses,
Mm-hmm.
but our competitors were Nestle,
Right.
Coca-Cola,
Hundreds of
yes,
products. Mm-hmm.
behemoths.
Mm-hmm.
And my second year of running marketing for this, we actually received an award for the best integrated marketing and PR program in the
Mm-hmm.
global bottled water industry. We weren't smarter than
Mm-hmm.
anybody else, frankly, but it was easier to be more agile,
Mm-hmm.
to be closer to our customers, to be
Mm-hmm.
more consistent. So if you think of, does the three-legged stool have short legs,
Mm-hmm.
or does it have really long legs?
Right. Yeah.
All sorts of bracing, and it can wobble really,
Mm-hmm.
really quickly. So take heart, entrepreneurs and small business owners. This is an area where you actually have an advantage over
Mm-hmm.
the big guys.
Right. Yeah. And it is easier to manage when there's less. I hate to say less, but so you're not managing, our 50,000 employees. What are they saying? Okay, well, I have one VA,
Yes, yes.
and one brochure, one website, all of those various things. And so, yeah, it is, in many cases, so much easier.
I have a number of examples in the book, all the way from a relative startup insurance company to a career changer to someone who went from working for MTV doing satellite operations to selling headpieces with bird feathers in them, to everything in between, businesses going generational change or trying to kind of change the narrative for their business. These kind of things that will play out. The benefits and some of the moving parts, some of the areas of emphasis might change, but again, whether it be big or small, even nonprofits, passion projects, whatever they may be, or you as an individual, kind of carving a new professional path, There's so much opportunity here.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, in the time, Deb, that we're talking here, and by the way, everyone listening, everyone watching, you're spending your time really well.
Mm-hmm.
So don't stop listening
This
in.
is good stuff.
But think through in the hour
Mm-hmm.
that you'll spend here learning about this, there are going to be probably a few dozen conversations happening out there about your business.
Right.
So it's going to be the time where you say, we won't perfect it, but we're going to get intentional about it. We're going to address that and tend to management to manage that, and the effects and the benefits will show up pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny, as you said that, I just had this flash, and of course we don't have very long left, and so I'm going to put this out there as maybe something we talk about in the future. You have to be part of that conversation. And in particular, I was thinking social media or, things like that, where, I have business owners all the time that come to me and say, Facebook is stupid. It's a waste of time. I don't want to be there. And I don't want to be there because somebody might say something bad. And I tell them, you need to be part of that conversation. You need to correct them, when it's appropriate, to give them that information, and all those various things, because we can't be ostriches. Those conversations are happening, and isn't it better to be part of that conversation, or at least monitoring it? You might not be leaping into it, but what is going on? What are people talking about?
You're right. You don't want to disconnect from it. Don't think that it's necessarily a snapshot of the real world at any particular point in time. Right. It's a part of it. You will learn things by monitoring that. Sometimes you can correct misperceptions. Sometimes you can highlight people that are saying great things. I'll also give one more little source of comfort, and this is from another author, actually a recent guest on my podcast. It's really good. A guy named Todd Capone, and he wrote a book called The Transparency Sale. Here's where his insight came from. He used to run a business out of Chicago, and what they would do is, and they would typically work with big consumer packaged goods companies, but they would go out and pull those ratings and reviews from third-party sites, and then they would put them on their clients' websites. Right. So
I've done that.
Yep, and it makes a lot of sense. So they had a nice window, Deb, on what kinds of ratings were the most powerful. I mean, do you need to get a 5.0 all the time? No. What they found, yeah, exactly right. That what they found is that an average rating for your business is best if it's between 4.2 and 4.5. So very good and solid, but not perfect.
Right. Because nobody's perfect. I'm suspicious of perfect.
That's right. And they also found if people, they go onto Amazon and they see a 1-star or 2-star product review, those are the ones that people scroll down to first. What's wrong with it?
Right.
And so if they're seeing 5s all the way through, then they think it's orchestrated and they don't believe it. Obviously, if there's a lot of bad stuff on there, they get a little anxious too. But so being really good is right where you want to be. And you probably already are really good.
Right.
And people also want to know that because you're not perfect. So when it's not really good every single time, what are you going to do about it?
Right. How do you fix it?
How do you fix it? And that's also something that you can track through both your offline stories and online as well.
Right. And telling people sometimes this went wrong. This is how we fixed it. Because that makes us human. And I don't care if it's, the one person or the company of, 500,000, we do make mistakes. So I want to know how it got fixed. That's why I read online reviews. I want to see what went wrong and how did they fix it.
And I think it also becomes, again, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners may have an intuitive sense of who is the best fit for their business, but really to be explicit about it. And we're not pushing anybody away,
right?
But you probably have a very good sense of which clients are a great fit for you. I have that same sort of sense. Right. And it becomes really well refined if you think about where did things go wrong, how do we fix it? And you can also have that conversation with people, say, okay, so what goes wrong? And also say, when we work with clients of a certain type, fewer things go wrong, a lot more things go right. Expectations are in alignment, and that's where it tends to go very, very smoothly.
Right. Good golly, Jim, we are at the top of the hour. This has been wonderful. I love discussions like this because this for me is what I do. This is what I love. This is what I read about, all these various things, because it's just so important for businesses to get their messaging correct. And it can easily go wrong. I mean, we've seen it where, like you said, one little wrong word, even some things like that. So then people tend, okay, well, we're not, no, but when you do it correctly, it can, it obviously makes all the difference in the world. And so that's why I love talking about this.
I've enjoyed the conversation. On the one end of the spectrum, you can just say, we can't do anything about this. People are going to say what they're going to say. That will be to the detriment of your business. You can go the other thing and we're going to get the iron fist of control and script this out for everybody, and you will be ignored, and you will probably be mocked behind your back.
Oh,
but
definitely.
Wonderful area in the middle for growth, which is managing that message and just deciding upon, what do you want to be known and believed about you? Whose help do you want and need to help share that? And how can you set some habits to keep it fresh and keep it conversational and relevant?
Right.
So there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, you want to keep it fresh. You want to keep it current. I always love the ad that, like, this time of year is referring back to spring. Okay. Easter? No, don't think so. Or kind of like the clock that's broken twice a year. It's correct. Keep it fresh. Keep it going. I want to show your book again. It is The Science of Customer Connections. Manage your message to grow your business. And I love this book. It was great. I read through it. It's fairly new, but yeah, tons of great information, lots of good examples. Because you are an academic, it has the information there to back up a lot of this. And I love that. And
I've also, I think it's conceptually sound, and I refer to a lot of other people's work as well. I've also worked with more than 10,000 business professionals over decade plus of doing consulting and training and coaching and that sort of thing as well. So it's grounded in real, actual reality, Deb. So I'm glad you enjoy that. I would invite as an additive, for anyone who enjoys podcasts. I have a podcast of my own.
Oh, yes.
Talk about business messaging from a lot of different angles.
I may have to be a guest.
I would love to have you on as a guest. I think it'd be terrific. So we will be getting our schedules ready for that. So it's called the Manage Your Message podcast, and we'll be kind to you. I think it'd be great to have you on.
I love it. I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
I really enjoy this opportunity. Would be happy to serve as a sounding board for anyone. If they go to my website, I do have it's a little weekly tips. I call it the Message Manager Memo. Deb, I'm all about alliteration, but it's some little practical tips that people can use. You can get that for free off my website, jimkarrh.com. There's the podcast and some other resources that are there. More than anything else, I've seen this play out well. I want people to have confidence in their value, and more than that, just confidence in the way that they can express that directly and through other people. There's a lot to be had there. Go forward, pick a conversation, work on it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but activity is better than too much planning.
Right. I love it. Well, and for people who are just listening to the podcast, it's JIMKARRH.com. So jimkarrh.com. And I'm Deb Karrh. I really have been having so much fun talking with Dr. Jim Karrh. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Karrh. Join us next time for more real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
You've been listening to C-Suite Radio. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.